This is Let's Talk Football on the sportshacks.com, and this is a World Cup Wednesday. A very special day for Scotland and for the Scotland fans because once again at the World Cup finals, for the fifth time, Scotland will play the mighty Brazil, the people who took the game back when the English gave it to the world and made it beautiful and made it so compelling for so many generations over so many years. Scotland against Brazil is live tonight from Miami, where the heat is on and the bagpipes are flying up and down the South Beach. And I'm delighted to say we have two very special guests from Scotland on Let's Talk Football today. First of all, our newly appointed, he may not know it himself, but our newly appointed Scottish football expert is Gerry Strain, a former Hamilton director of football, Hamilton FC. And Gerry was a guest on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke so eloquently even about Glasgow Celtic, about Scottish football, and that very strange relationship between Irishness and Scottish football. And today's very special guest is a good friend of Gerry, a man I'm delighted to say we have on board for this Scottish football special. Legendary Scottish football commentator, football administrator, including time at Glasgow Celtic, a former chairman of Hamilton Academical Football Club, and a member of Scotland's football dynasty. Jock Brown, you're very welcome. Gerry, you're very welcome. And gentlemen, Scotland are very welcome to Ireland tonight.
Thank you, Carl. Perfect, yeah.
First of all, let's start with some history and some folklore, because Scotland against Brazil, it happens statistically 50% of the time Scotland qualify for the World Cup. There's a very special relationship between Scotland and Brazil.
Yeah, there certainly is. And the great thing about it is that on only one occasion, we played 10 times against Brazil in matches, 4 times the World Cup so far, and 6 other matches. And only once have we lost by more than 1 goal. And that was in 1982 in Spain. If you remember the famous game in Seville where David Nery scored what was called a toe poke, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Gave us the lead after about half an hour. And that got the Brazilians angry, and Zico in particular got angry. And we lost 4-1. But on no other occasion have we lost by more than an odd goal. That's incredible.
So David toe poked the bear, so to speak, back then.
That's it.
Jock, you and I were at the 1998 World Cup, the opening match in Paris in the Stade de France, an incredible occasion. A very special game for you because your brother, Craig, was the Scotland manager. And there are some incredible stories about the build-up to that tournament, about Sean Connery, about Rod Stewart, about Wayne the Duvet for John Collins, etc. But tell us the story about the kilts and tell us what happened in the tunnel before the match.
Oh, well, the kilts was a good one because my brother was determined to get. He was a really particular guy with kit and things. You wouldn't have any players playing in a team, for instance, with their stockings at their ankles. That was impossible. Even in those days, a shirt outside the shorts, which is everyone does now. Even then, you had to have everyone the same. There had to be a team in every respect. They had to be smart and well turned out and all that sort of stuff. You couldn't tape up your shin pads, for instance, in blue stockings with white tape. He wouldn't allow that. And he provided blue tape for that purpose. And one player in particular insisted on white tape because he was superstitious. And my brother told him he could be superstitious in the stand. That was Steve Nicol, by the way, Liverpool. Yeah. But anyway, he wanted a very special kit for the Scotland players, and he was given authority from the SFA to arrange something appropriate. And he knew that he wanted kilts and Highland dress, and he knew that would never be approved by the SFA because it would be far too expensive for one thing, and it would be a bit off the wall another way. But he was determined, and the players bought in. So he arranged for them all to be kitted out in the tartan gear and the kilts, and they had to tell nobody in advance. Nobody had to know because they felt if the SFA got to know, they would block that. So the first time the SFA knew that was the case is when they actually appeared in the kilts. And the players bought in completely. They were very happy to do it, and it was a big, big thing. And I think it was a huge success doing that. So he got his kilt sorted out, and then he had, of course, the the issue that they're playing Brazil, who are not a bad team, as we all knew. So he was determined to try and quieten down the nerves and calm people down, and also keep a light. He also believed a lightness in the dressing room was good too. A bit of humour and a bit of laughter and a bit of banter was also good. So he had gone out just before the match, and warm-ups had finished and things, and then they were called to go out, and he went out and saw that the Brazilian team were already forming in the tunnel, and they were holding hands, which they did routinely. It was a regular thing they did, showing the teamwork thing. And he went back into the dressing room, and there's a lot of tension and nerves in the dressing room. And he said, "I've just seen the Brazilian team. They're holding hands. They're shitting themselves." And all the players, of course, burst out laughing at that. And the tension was gone. Darren Jackson told me, for his, he liked to go out last always, and he was last beside Ronaldo. And he said, former Meadowbank Thistle striker. He said, when I'm in the tunnel for the first game of the World Cup, and I'm looking across at Ronaldo, who looked across at him very respectfully, he said,
as he held hands with the man next to him.
They held hands with his teammate.
For you, Jerry, I mean, do you remember '98? I know you're much younger than Jock and myself now, for example.
I do. I distinctly remember it for a number of different reasons. Our professional pre-season, I'd been down at Queenie South at the time. Brown Alexander allowed me down there, and pre-season started back the day Argentina played Holland. Dennis Bergkamp scored that wonderful goal, with the flick and the finish. And then obviously, I remember the Scotland-Brazil game for a completely different reason. I just started dating a really good-looking girl.
Was she blind?
No, she was blonde. She actually was. She was blonde. And,
you've got that wrong. It's blind.
Aye. No, honestly, punching me above my league.
Did you take her out to watch the match?
We kind of watched the game. Aye, it was a good date, and that's. I remember Colin scoring his penalty. That was an afternoon off, I think.
It was significant, Jock, wasn't it? Because it was the opening game in the stadium. There was a lot of pomp and ceremony went on beforehand, and I think Brazil scored early. But one of the feelings at the time was that Scotland, their pre-match rhythm was upset by the fact that there was so much going on the pitch, etc. But Scotland did come back into the game that day.
Well, they certainly did. There's no doubt about that. The very interesting aspect of this tactically was my brother told me afterwards that, in fact, before the game I knew this, he'd spoken to Bobby Robson, with whom he was very friendly, who'd managed Ronaldo at Barcelona. And he contacted Bobby Robson and said to him, "Bobby, how do you handle Ronaldo? How do you cope with him defensively? What's the best way to deal with Ronaldo?" And Robson said, "There's no way to deal with Ronaldo. You can't deal with Ronaldo. What you have to do is make sure he doesn't get the ball." And when he plays for Brazil, 75% of the passes he receives come from Cafu, the right back. So make sure you stand on Cafu and prevent any service into Ronaldo, and you'll cope with Ronaldo. So my brother took that on board. He had Christian Daly playing left wing back in the game, who's a very good athlete, as was Cafu, obviously. And he said to Christian Daly before the game, "Well, your job is to make sure that Cafu plays no passes to Ronaldo. So that means you better keep him on the outside. And if he gets 2 passes to Ronaldo, you'll be sitting beside me in the dugout." Daly's, okay. And Daly did a fantastic job in making sure Cafu didn't supply Ronaldo.
And he never got to sit in the dugout.
He didn't have to sit in the dugout.
It was John Collins, as we said. I mean, John Collins, Craig, I was reading before we spoke, and Craig was saying that he was the interpreter because he'd been in France for 2 years at that stage. And When he was doing his pre-match press conference, he gave him a wonderful saying, didn't he? He gave him a little bit of French to bring into the conference.
Yeah, that's right. You need to remind me of what it was.
Well,
he did have
loosely translated, it said, "Victory or defeat, the most important thing is the fun."
yeah,
And
that's right.
and again, it just deflated everything.
He delivered it in French. That was back again to his style at the time, was to take tension and nerves out of players. He did that normally with that kind of conduct, that kind of gentle laughter, lightness. He believed a lot in that. Because dressing rooms before big matches, as you know, Jerry, are terrible places, really. In the last few minutes, you've done the warm-up and all you've got left is focus in the game. And if you're playing against a top team like Brazil, and you then start doubting yourself in any ways, should I be here? Am I good enough? Am I going to cope? Is this going to work? And he thought the lightness was really important.
For you, Jerry, looking back at that game, and I know you had other things on your mind that evening, but it was a late OG from Tom Boyd that sorted the match out and that won the game for Brazil. And Scotland going into tonight's game, the fear about Brazil, is the fear factor still as strong about this Brazilian team as it may have been in the past? Never mind for Scotland, but for anybody.
I think it's a very good question, Carl. I don't think it's the same.
No, it's not. There's no question about that.
No.
Remember another thing, though. It's very important, Carl. Played them 10 times, lost by more than one goal once. Mm-hmm. So there's no history that says we're in for a drubbing here. Apart from the game in Seville, which I was at in 1982, the tragedy there was the conditions were appalling. It was unbelievably hot that night, and there was no drinks breaks or hydration breaks. So they're playing this game, and in the first half hour or so, Scotland played very well in that game, and it went ahead through David Derry. Talked about that, but thereafter ran right out of gas. And that was a 4-1. Now, no other occasion have we lost more than one goal. So why are you going to be petrified to go out and make the right? And this is not as good a team as they have been in the past.
No, they're not. And I think the bit you touched on, Big Jock touched on about the hydration breaks, that interrupts the flow of the game. I don't care what you say. And if you're a good footballing outfit who play football, total football, the last thing you want is an interruption to the match. Because that interrupts the flow.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I watched the first half of the French game against Iran, and I didn't have 2 hours to wait for the second half, so I went to bed. But the interesting thing was that after the hydration break, and let's face facts, it's a quarter. They've managed to bring American football into football for the World Cup, or quarters for the American audiences. But after the first quarter break, Iran were far better in the second quarter, and the momentum seemed to go a little bit out of France. Now, I didn't see the second half, so I have no idea what happened there. But it is interesting you say that, Jerry, because it breaks up momentum, doesn't it?
I think it does, and that to me would suit Scotland, because you can regroup and go again. I found that at the match on Friday night against Morocco, who were far superior, a far better team. The individual skill set each player arguably is better, but after the hammer blow, the goal after 71 seconds, the chance to regroup, I thought, was in Scotland's favour. And I actually thought we were very unlucky not to win the match. I thought we were robbed.
In what way were we robbed?
Well, I've seen people speak about forums and so on, but I think we should 2 penalty kicks. I think that the McGinn one was a blatant penalty.
The only problem I've got with that is I thought Haiti should have had 2 penalty kicks.
Aye, well, maybe, aye. Yeah.
Why is VAR not working then? Because it's there to sort these things out.
Well, that goes back to the point about the man in the street points to corruption. They don't want. There's a belief that FIFA want an African nation to get to the last stages of the World Cup. That's a kind of common belief that exists.
I'm sure that's true. Actually, that I can understand that.
Yeah,
but I still don't see. The thing with VAR, what I see in this current World Cup is that the VAR seems to want to support the referee. They need a real reason to overturn a decision that a referee makes. Because if you look at all the matches across the whole range, there have been very few
Yeah,
That's
And
changed
that
things.
that is a sea change from what we've seen with VAR so far on this side of the pond, as they call it, isn't it?
yeah.
Correct.
I think the referees need support. Certainly, we're digressing slightly here, but if you look at the SFA, the way that VAR's been used has been to overturn what the referee perceives, and I think that's very unfair because they've only got a millisecond to make up a decision. You know, and in Scotland we don't have full-time referees. There's not a huge investment in the refereeing infrastructure of Scottish football either, and you're holding these guys accountable to the same level as your Premiership guys who are on VAR. I just think it's wrong, but I can understand if it's being used to back referees, it's a good thing because the game needs good refs and you need your confidence in the system that's behind you. But I still think Scotland should have 2 penalties. And to take Jock's point, yeah, Haiti should have 1 or 2 as well.
What I also think is interesting is that maybe I'm wrong on this, but I don't see the referees being called to the sideline as often as we do again on this side of the pond.
That's right. And that's good. That's good. I think that's a good thing.
You know, I mean, and that's.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tonight. I'm going to talk bagpipes and fans shortly because you've managed to take this title. I'm going to be shot for saying this, but you managed, I think, to take the title of greatest fans in the world away from the Green Army or the Boys in Green or whatever we're calling them on social media this weather. But we're not there, so we can't defend our title. And we will talk about that in a few minutes. But first of all, in terms of the football, I mean, Jerry, you know this from talking to me previously, but I think John McGinn is a fantastic old-fashioned midfield player who you would go to war with and you go for a pint with.
Absolutely.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
No doubt about that. Yeah, despite what Roy Keane said about him.
But he's exactly what you need in the trenches, isn't it? And he's exactly what you're going to need against Brazil.
Well, I thought against Morocco, McGinn's character was so obvious. I think they were a far better technical team. But when you looked at the individual pieces that McGinn brought to the fore, that we took a lot of heart from that. The driving runs, you know, the breaking up the play, you know, his movement I thought was brilliant. He seemed really up for it. But I think it's the way Clark, Steve Clark obviously believes in him and gives him a freedom to play that way. And I just think his character's second to none. But that comes from humility, I think. It comes from family and upbringing and good roots, you know, and good values.
He's got all that too. Yeah,
he's got that in abundance, and I think that shows in his game. There's no aloofness with him. But it's a disappearing art from when you go and watch games, particularly youth games now. There's very few players like that.
If you look back to when Jock and I would have met at the World Cup in 1990, and I'm fairly certain we did, somewhere in the changeover in Genoa when I think we went into Scotland's team hotel, if I remember rightly. But John McGinn, I mean, in that era, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, they were riddled with Scottish and Irish players. And you know, we've all suffered because of the influx of so many foreign players coming in and the downfall of the Berlin Wall. As somebody said to me once, back in those days, there was one Russia, now there's about 28 teams came out of Russia. So it is a very different landscape. But John McGinn would have been in that company, wouldn't he, alongside all those players at Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal?
I think so. Yeah, I would go for that, without doubt. Yeah. The strange thing in this country was that Celtic didn't take him when he was at Hibs. That was really very, very surprising.
Well, I think they did, but they were a bit slow. I think
they certainly missed him anyway, and he would have been an outstanding player for them for a long time. But he wouldn't have been so rich.
And I don't think he'd have been as good. I don't think he'd have reached. I think, you know, that's, speaking of someone that grew up a Celtic fan, I think that Celtic would have hindered his progress because by getting the exposure he got in the Premier League, it's made him a better player. You know, and the standards are far better. So I think it's been better for him, you know, for that Celtic through.
And you can have a word with Martin O'Neill. There's still time for him to go back. Still,
that's if Martin's allowed to sign his own players.
now that he's going to be building his own team, as we discussed, Larry. Alongside him, Scott McTominay and Lewis Ferguson. I mean, Lewis Ferguson and McTominay have covered more miles in this tournament, kilometres as the FIFA like to call it, but they have covered more mileage than any other players at the World Cup. The two of them are top of that list. That again tells you something about the spirit and the determination and the way the manager is sending them out to play.
I think that's a great tribute to the manager, actually. I really do, because especially McTominay, we take him as a Scotsman and we're delighted to have him as a Scotsman, but I mean, he is English, isn't he? I mean, he really is English. But he has bought in a massive way to the Scottish team and the importance of it and so forth. And I think Steve Clarke gets very little credit for doing that. And I think he should get a lot more.
And then young Ferguson, he comes from football royalty, doesn't he, Jerry?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he does.
The Rackies.
Yeah, he came from. He came. I think he spent a year at Accies before going.
I was trying to drop that in subtly to see would you pick up on it, but you did. So,
but he was rejected by Rangers as a youngster.
I believe so. Yeah.
And finished up at Hamilton.
And of course, his dad.
Hamilton,
His dad is Derek and his uncle is Barry, so there's football in the blood.
I actually thought his dad was a better footballer of the three. I thought Derek Ferguson was a tremendous player.
Super player.
And he was very, very underrated. You know, I thought that. I remember the time it was him and Ian Durrant and Alan McCoist.
Well, they 2 caps, I think, weren't they?
That was all he got, yeah.
That's right, yeah. 2 caps of Derek, yeah.
An absolutely tremendous player. Honestly, I don't know what you've heard about him yourself, Carl, but he was, for me, him Durrant McCoist were a trilogy.
Mm. The other thing about Lewis Ferguson is great is he's a real good lad. That's the other very important thing too. And I think the Scottish team currently right now is blessed with good people.
Good characters.
And I think that's very important, especially if you're in a 6-week tour to America. Yeah. You want good characters and good guys that are popular and get on with everybody else. And Lewis Ferguson, I know, certainly fits into that.
Yeah, I didn't have the pleasure of knowing him. He was gone from the club before I arrived at Hamilton. But the people who were there who did know him, again, go on about the humility he's got, you know, in the way that, you know, that he's obviously for a good background with parents and so on.
He was in the same class at Hamilton Grammar School as my granddaughter.
Oh, was he?
And she speaks very highly of him as a guy. So a really good guy.
Yeah.
And it's never easy for a player whose father and uncle are footballers of such stature. I mean, that straight away, the minute they walk on the pitch, everyone's expecting them to be the next Barry Ferguson or the next Derek Ferguson. So fair play to him for that. Jack Hendry, talk to me about him, because we don't know a lot about Jack Hendry, but he's been so impressive so far in this World Cup.
I think Jack Hendry's possibly been our best player.
Yeah.
In the 2 matches so far, he's been outstanding. And I've got to claim to be a little bit surprised at that, because historically you would never have had him classed as that good a centre-back at national level. So what he's learned in Saudi Arabia, I don't know, because he was at Celtic for a while, wasn't he?
Celtic.
Didn't break up trees there, did he?
No, Celtic signed him as the next best thing from Dundee.
Yeah, and then he went to Bruges, where he played in good European stuff, and I think that helped a lot in his development.
Brought on a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but and he's played for Scotland before, he's been okay. But this tournament has shown him to be much better than that.
Yeah, but he's grown in stature as well, I think. He's grown in confidence. You can see that in him.
Yeah.
You lacked that at Celtic, certainly.
You'd have to think.
Yes, aye.
You'd have to think he won't be in Saudi football for much longer, wouldn't you, after this World Cup? He's certainly attracted, I would imagine.
Except him, to pay him a lot of wages then, wouldn't they? They pay him a lot of money.
Well, we all know football's better this side of the world. We all know that. That's Tell us about the attack. Ben Gannon Doak is the one player playing without any fear whatsoever. He just gets out there and plays. Young player, middle enough sort of a season at Bournemouth, but you can see in him he's out on the street playing football, isn't he? He's not fazed by where he is, by who he's playing against.
I was at his debut for Celtic against Dundee United, just before he left to go to Liverpool. And his directness was what stood out. Very, very direct. I know some of his teammates, the young boy Daniel Kelly, who was at Celtic as well. That's how I got to know who they were, and I know Daniel really well. And he speaks highly of him, but it was his commitment to the game, his commitment to development. And I think the move to Liverpool had been kind of teed up prior to him getting his debut. But obviously, yet again, when you move out of this environment into the environment of better professionals and a better calibre of player, day in, day out, their demands are higher.
I don't agree that this is the only player in the Scotland squad that played without fear. Don't believe that. I don't believe John McGinn's frightened of anybody.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other players in the same category. I don't think Andy Robertson or Kieran Tierney, these guys are not frightened of anybody.
In terms of the attacking threat tonight, and Vinny, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Vinicius Jr. Is it, Jock?
That's Vinicius Jr.
Vinicius Jr.
Doesn't he? He might make a living. He might make a living.
But himself and Cunha, and of course Neymar is available, or they're saying he's available to play against Scotland. I mean, they have goals in their team. Defensively, what sort of a job do you think Scotland are going to have on their hands tonight?
I think they're well enough drilled already to know what they're going to do, and they've got enough decent defenders. I've got to qualify that a little bit. I mean, I think Jack Henry has shown himself to be a top-class international centre-back. I'm not sure about the partnership with Grant Hanley. I'm not sure about that, and that could be exposed.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder. I don't know what will happen, but I kind of wonder if a bit more pace and athleticism beside Jack Henry would be appropriate.
Could be better, yeah.
And I think if Scott McKenna is fit,
yeah,
and that's a question mark. If he's fully fit, he certainly has the pace and has the background that might fit in slightly better than Grant Hanley. Not knocking him because he's done a great job for many, many years in the Scottish team, but in terms of athleticism required, I think, to cope with Brazil, I just wonder if that's the right combination.
I think when you see Morocco's first goal was Morocco's only goal on Friday, that yard makes a difference. And it was obviously Hanley caught out. I'm not so sure McKenna gets caught out with that. The reading the game, Hanley seemed to be a bit more deep. But we're all experts. Do you know that's you get a chance to watch it?
But he committed the cardinal sin of stepping out against the ball.
Yes, I get that
as a centre back.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
I get that. So, but I just think as Jock had said, Steve Clarke knows how to defend.
Yeah.
You look at the job he done at Kilmarnock. God, when you had them finish so high up the Premier League.
One of my sadnesses, actually, I've got to say about the Scottish squad for this match, and certainly for the World Cup generally, is that Aaron Hickey has not been fit. Fit enough, I reckon. He played in the first game and struggled a bit in the first game, and he is an outstanding fullback, I think, if he's fully fit. And he won't play tonight, and he missed the Morocco game. And I think that's a huge miss for us.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But they know how to defend. And if you, again, the interruption of the 4 quarters, if you can break the game into, if you can break the game down, I remember Gordon Strachan saying, break it into bite-sized chunks. Don't look at because the bigger picture will sometimes consume you. If you break it into 4 quarters and we just, we need to finish nothing each for the first 3 and we win the 4th.
And everybody will be happy. What about this notion that, Scotland don't have to win the game, a draw will put them through, and there's even chance that if you keep it down, and I take your point, Jock, that, you've never lost bar once by a heavy score against Brazil, but does any football team and any football manager really think they can get away with playing for a draw?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so. I think you can set up to be solid defensively and be compact and maybe not be committing so many players into attack. But I don't think that's not quite the same as saying playing for a draw.
I don't think you can. Certainly, I've never experienced it.
In any event, counter-attacking is so effective in the modern game.
Yeah.
So if you can break an attack, I mean, that a lot of teams do that. They actually play in their own half and look to break.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever seen it and it worked was, if you remember, back in 1990 when Ireland and Holland, Niall Quinn scored the equaliser. It was about 8 minutes to go, and the 2 captains, Mick McCarthy and Ruth Hulett, decided that we're both going to go through, so let's just protect ourselves here. And they played out the 8 minutes. Ireland passed the ball to each other across the pitch, etc. So much so that the referee actually called them together. And Mick McCarthy famously said to the referee, because the referee was saying, you got to play football here, get on with it. Mick said, this is the most football we've ever played under Jack Charlton. What are you talking about? So that's the only time I've ever seen it happen, and it did work. But hopefully there will be no need for that tonight. Let's talk about the fans then as we finish up, because as I said to you, they've managed to usurp the Irish supporters. We had in 2016 in France, we had Irish supporters changing wheels on punctures for nuns. We had them following women out of lingerie shops and singing Lady in Red by Kristen Borg, etc. But it just seems the Scots have taken this to another level, which is difficult, by the way, because the Norwegians are now rowing their way across America. Even the players have bought into it. We saw the celebrations last night on the pitch. And, it just seems quite incredible. I didn't know you could have a sing-song with a bagpipe, and now I do.
Of course,
Is this a regular thing, lads, in bars and pubs in Scotland?
Actually, this is quite significant. It's quite remarkable to think about it. When we go abroad to tournaments as a national team, I'm never in any way worried about the Scottish supporters going abroad.
I think there's a pride, though. There's a pride in the identity.
Yes, that's true.
And there's almost like a self-policing. So the last international match I took my son down to Wembley, and I was a wee bit concerned, not from a Scottish fan's perspective, but just through the pesky English attacking you every opportunity. Has been my experience. But the self-policing of the Scotland fans, particularly around Leicester Square, was tremendous. And there's a pride and identity and culture, and then leaving a good imprint.
Which is very similar to the Irish fans. That cabinet behind you is made out of goalposts from Wembley, is it, Jerry? Is that where the is that where the timber came from, though? Yeah, tell us then. We discussed this last week, Jerry, as well. But I mean, the fact that Scotland got into Boston, and already it is very much a Celtic city already, Boston. But they took over the Irish bars, they took over the city, they took over the supply of alcohol, and for some reason, Scottish fans now seem to be infatuated with baseball. Because they were at the Red Sox. I see last night they were at the Miami Marlins, and they got their biggest crowd on a Monday in donkey's years. Yeah. Where did this baseball come from?
Well, I don't understand that either in one sense, except I do recall being in Boston myself, a totally different task, and being taken to watch the Boston Red Sox match, and I had never seen a baseball game before, and I thought, terrific. Yeah. I loved it, and I think it was easy to enjoy. I mean, unlike American football, I can't quite get into that the same way, but I thought baseball was really good. I think if you're giving something, the Scots like it, they'll follow it.
Aye. I think you touched on an interesting point, though, Cal. And this might play into part of why the Scottish fans have been so revered. The city that we ended up in is Boston. Boston's a unique type of person, the same way Chicago. Mm-hmm. The unique type of people who a lot of them are expats from the UK and Ireland. If we ended up somewhere else and perhaps the West Coast, it might be a whole different.
Well, we're in Miami now.
Yeah,
and it's all right.
Aye, but Miami's partly central, though, isn't it? Anyway, but I think the dress helps. The kilt certainly helps because it's different.
Yeah. I saw one. I think he's a speaker in the House of Representatives, but he's definitely a very highly ranked Boston, New England politician, and he basically said, let's bring you back every year. Let's have a game against Ireland or a game against a local team or whatever every year in Boston now. And Infantino and Sheffrin might have something to say about that, and I'm sure the FA and the FAI and the Scottish FA will be quite happy to have a lucrative match in Boston every year. So I'll make you a promise, lads. If we're in Boston next year, we'll do a broadcast from Boston. How about that? And you can wear the kilts. I'll remain in my Irish traditional summer attire of raincoat and rain trousers. But I'll probably make you that promise that if we do end up in Boston next year, we'll do that from one of the Irish pubs in Boston. I'm going to ask you lastly, they say no Scotland, no party, and there will be a party in Miami tonight, no matter what happens. But match-wise, can you give us a prediction, and do you think Scotland will get through?
I think we'll go through, but I think we maybe get a 1-1 draw. We'll be beaten 1-0. It's unlikely we'll win. I'd love us to win, but it's unlikely.
I agree with that. I'm sure we'll go through. I'm absolutely sure we'll go through. Almost no matter what happens tonight.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll lose heavily. I think it'll be very tight. And I think what you say is right. A draw or a 1-goal defeat.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of this little part of Ireland, I can wish you only the best of luck in Miami tonight. I thank you both for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you both, to Jock Brown and to Jerry Strain. And Jerry, you've got the gig. Congratulations. We'll be talking to you next week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Carl.
Al. Thank you.
Catch you later.